All right, all right, all right. I wanted to go over a few things with you guys. As we are ending this lesson on pathogens. And remember, your vocabulary is so important. And the word pathogen means anything that can make you sick. And so we looked at a virus and bacteria, and we also um, introduced parasites. Now, keep in mind, unlike your virus and bacteria, parasites are eukaryotic, which means that these guys do have organized cell parts. Um, and the word parasite really means something that has to feed off of something else and depend on them. And the next thing the word parasite means is that they generally have a negative impact. So if someone says you have parasites, they don't mean that you just have something, or if someone says you are a parasite, they don't mean you're just doing something. They really mean that you're having a negative effect on their well-being. So parasites not only feed off of something else, they generally hurt them, and they hurt them either by reproducing and becoming a immune response problem, or they hurt them by fighting their body for nourishment. Okay, so tapeworms are the most common type of parasite that's common in mammals, but there are lots of other ones that we've introduced. If you're looking at your parasites, most parasites get into our body by, well, as humans, by the food we consume. Very few humans walk around barefoot in our exposed environment. That's just not something we do a lot of anymore. And so the easiest way for a parasite to get into our body is by eating undercooked food. And that's why it's so important to know what is the certain temperature that you have to cook chicken or beef or even pork at, because that ensures that any parasitic worms or any cysts that were inside that organism would die from the heat of the cooking process. Um, One of the medicines they will give you if you have a parasite is they can give you antibiotics, because these are living things. So there are some antibiotics. They also have some very specific uh, parasitic, anti-parasitic medicine, depending on which type of parasites you have. A lot of times because they're eukaryotic, they're big enough, particularly as they multiply and reproduce, that sometimes doctors can go in and directly remove them. We looked at that when we look at the bot fly. Okay, that where it was living inside the kid's head. The doctor is not going to give medicine for that. He's going to go in and remove that. But once it's removed, that opening now becomes a problem for bacteria and other viral issues. And so they may treat the area with antibiotic or some antiviral cream or medicine to avoid that open wound being sick. In the case of the trypanosomus, which we saw with the tsetse fly as it bit the guy, is that, well, that is a such a small parasite that has to be treated with a specific type of medicine, because that's more internal. Um, Ascaris worms. So each of these have a different response. Okay, so parasites, they're eukaryotic. You need certain medicines. But once again, keep eating not eating undercooked food and being aware of your surroundings will keep you safe from most of these guys. Um, we won't go into that. So the next one we're going to look at is fungi. Fungi is plural and fungus is singular. So the family of these guys are called fungi. These guys are parasitic in nature. What does that mean? It means that they, like your parasites, have to feed off of something else. Even though most fungi look like plants, or if a lot of times we thought they were plants, as technology improved, we realized that, hey, these guys are not doing the one important thing all plants can do. They do know photosynthesis. So because of that, they are not producers, they are consumers. Okay, they cannot make their own food and they feed off of a host. So if you see a mushroom growing in your yard, that means that there's some type of dead or decaying matter um, in that section of your yard, whether it's a grass or maybe some bugs that died. But fungi, particularly mushrooms, they generally, their role in nature is to be decomposers. They only grow where there's dead or decaying matter. There are some uh, fungi that are a little more common to our environment, like mold. Mold generally grows where there's wet or is a moist environment. Um, if you had a leak and water got onto your walls, mold can grow because it doesn't do photosynthesis, but it does in a moist environment or a wet environment to kind of grow on. And the sheetrock, which is the covering of most walls and most homes, is made from a plant-based material. And so if it gets wet, it starts to decompose, and that attracts and grows the mold, which quite frankly is in the air. If we're talking about pathogenic fungi, we would then be talking about things like athlete's foot or ringworm. Um, these are uh, these are mold or fungus infections that can make humans sick. If you're talking about ringworm, it's a skin fungal infection, pretty easily treated with some antifungal cream. If you're talking athlete's foot, which is looks like this, let me get to it. So athlete's foot is when you have a fungal infection. It's called athlete's foot because it's found where there's a lot of moisture. So a lot of athletes, if you're wearing socks and you're playing basketball or football, whatever, your feet get pretty wet from the sweat. And if you don't dry your feet off properly, you have the ability to now um, cultivate or grow that fungus on your feet just because you're keeping on this wet, sticky socks for a long period of time. This is also why you should never, in a public shower, you shouldn't walk around without shower sandals on. Just some regular good hygiene stuff that's going to protect you from athlete's foot. Um, and it's characterized by a dry, itchy area on your feet, and it's pretty easy treatable. You can go to any Walgreens or pharmacy, you can buy some antifungal spray, and if you spray on it for probably about a couple of days, that's going to dry up and kill the fungus growing on your feet. It's also why you should not share shoes with other people, because if they have fungal infections, it is rather contagious. It can be spread by direct contact very easily from person to person. Same thing with ringworm. If I have a ringworm infection on my arm, and I start rubbing it on somebody else, because these things are eukaryotic, um, and they do grow, even though they are parasitic in nature, they can be easily spread. This is a picture of a fungal infection on a human eyelash. So this is why you should not share personal products like mascara or even a hairbrush. If someone has a fungal infection of their scalp and they're using a comb or brush and you use a comb or brush, well, keep in mind these things are contagious, so they can be spread. We're going to watch this video in class just because it won't show up really well on the recording. But these things, if we're talking about fungi, they do reproduce sexually and asexually. What that means is that they can release spores into the air. So what a mushroom or mold does is that it does, for lack of a simple term, it does ripen. And when the fungus ripens, the tip of it actually explodes and releases baby fungi into the air, and that fungi can be breathed in or it can land on another person or another part of your yard, and that's how the mushroom or the fungi can spread through a house. These guys do use the air as a means of transportation to move from one part to another. The mushroom doesn't move. The mushroom releases its babies into the air, and the air will move it around your house, and what's not. So these guys are fairly successful in spreading. All right, so that's your lesson. I recap yesterday's lesson and taught today's lesson. So please, when we come in class, let's make sure we're prepared to discuss fungi and then move on. All right, good job. So for those of you that were absent, you do have an assignment for me that's due on Friday. If you go to your Google Classroom, it is posted. Once you click on the pathogen student sheet, this will pop up. I want to go over what this assignment looks like. So I've given you two slides here. What you're going to do is simply fill in the information that's missing based upon the notes and the content that we covered in class. And remember, all of your content is right here. I gave you guys all the answers and all the notes you'll need right there. So if we're looking at a fungi, our lesson we just covered, is it living or non-living? We talked about how it can be transmitted in the air, so by indirect or direct contact, and so forth. I also gave you some diseases that it can cause. And so you would simply take that information and list it here. If you're going to Google information, please do not type in a whole, don't cut and paste a whole paragraph. Just copy the one or two words you need. Keep everyone's lives pretty simple. This is due on Friday. When you're done filling in all this information here, you simply go back to your Google Classroom and you're going to submit it. This is a Google slide, so it will save. You can go and come back, but make sure you submit it to me by Friday. Okay.